Part of my role as a volunteer with the American Red Cross is a leadership role to work with emergency management and the Emergency Operations Center. When I reflect back to the 45 major disasters I've been around the world, this was probably the second largest flood event that really has significantly hit this country. I became involved with the county on the 7th of June and reached out to serve the city on the 9th of June because we knew the crisis was looming. We knew we were going to have a flood. Oh, I remember calling Charles up. It was about 6 o'clock in the evening. And I said, Charles, I've been on a lot of disasters in my lifetime. And I said, I'm so tired of waiting until after a disaster occurs before we go out and help people and start saving lives and property. 7:30 the next morning, we met over at L's Community. We had almost 100 some clergy leadership there that said, we can do this.
Because of the fact that Serve the City represents a coalition of 37 churches, Serve the City was able to ramp up a volunteer base from just a few dozen people to, by the end of the week, it mushroomed to about 3,000 as our connections with local media and as our role as really a volunteer coordinator for the community emerged.
Serve the City really played a tremendous role because they established the phone lines, they had the people answering the phones, and they were channeling the information to all the hungry people that wanted to help.
And having followed disasters prior to this, Katrina and the like, it seemed to me that FEMA and the Red Cross had really gotten bogged down doing things that weren't necessarily their role. And I would think, the primary thing that stands out in my mind is coordinating these volunteer efforts. They were able to work, I think, very quickly here, set up camp and function in their truest capacity because Serve the City was there picking up this end of it.
Realizing that our church was in jeopardy, we spent every effort that we could in helping the neighbors retrieve and evacuate whatever things that they had, their precious things. It was 12:15. We were ordered to be out of here by noon. 12:15, we looked at our clock and we just looked at each other and we said, God, thank you. And we walked away. I knew in my gut that we were walking away from a lot, but I didn't know the devastation that would take place. We got a shell.
The police department in the briefing, looking at the maps, made it clear very dramatically that there was no possible way they could get to all of the houses in time to communicate. So their plan at that point was to actually just take cars and do loudspeakers. And they admittedly kept saying, but that is not going to be comprehensive enough. Well, at that point, I spoke up in the briefing and said, well, we can get to the houses simply because we had such great success in time check. What happened is, I believe within 2.5 hours or 3 hours, we had enough volunteers deployed that evening got the fire department paper, every door knocked on, every person talked to see that the evacuation happened.
It now had moved beyond individual homes and what we could do for individual residents to the excitement and the heroism, if you will, of having to supply volunteers to save core infrastructure in our community, to save hospitals, to save water pumps.
With the loss of the homes, with the loss of the infrastructure, with the loss of all the government buildings, we had every decision-making person out of their offices and loss of computers.
at the Emergency Operations Center, you had the police, the fire, the National Guard, the Red Cross. You had all of the vital, the school system, the hospitals. They were all represented, all these vital ingredients to working together in the same room. And we had 3 from Serve the City in that room. So when there was needs and we could supply the answer, somebody in there, they were all working together was awesome.
We came within hours of having no water, no electricity, no sewer. That doesn't get much more catastrophic than that in a major disaster. And without the help of Serve the City, there had been no way the point of distribution's been able to be established. There had been no way to calm the fears of the public at large, because the city had no resources, the county had no resources with manpower. They were already tied up fighting the water. It was indeed a day of valor when Serve the City stepped forth and said, whatever you throw at us, we'll do it.
And I saw men of faith that were trying to really be kind and gentle and respect and love each other, even in the midst of a situation. It'd be very easy to lose your temper. It'd be very easy to want to yell at the person next to you. And honestly, I was like, wow.
But some people began to call us Save the City. But you know, we don't think we really saved the city. We were just being obedient to do our part. When we look at the police and the fire and the National Guard and the people who worked in hospitals, when we look at so many entities around this area, we were all out there serving the city. And those who were volunteers with Serve the City were doing our part, and we did it gladly.
That's where we did get some national attention that other disaster-stricken areas didn't, because the people of Cedar Rapids decided they were going to own this. They weren't sitting around waiting for anybody else to fix it. That was their problem.
We were faithful to go to 535 homes. We were faithful in a little thing. So we were given more. We went to 2,000 to 3,000 homes in addition to the 535. We were faithful to do that.
The national media has left. The waters have receded, but the homes are still destroyed. There are so many businesses, so many homes that are still sitting empty and have had no repair work done because the money's not there. And so there is still a lot of work that needs to be done to rebuild our community. Serve the City, the big need we have had all along, we had no operating budget. We weren't prepared for this. And we just need to have funding to do the work of coming alongside families, coming alongside small businesses to help them rebuild.
I was coming down the hallway one day and seeing a young man who was living at the shelter. His t-shirt on the back, he was walking away from me, said championships are won in the off season. And I just stopped walking. I stood there and I watched him go, and I began to realize that if we had not done what we had done in 1998, 1999 or 2000 with Convoy, or 2002 with Voices of Hope, or even as recent as October of last year with our Operation Serve, where we were out in 5 school districts on 30 campuses, and we were learning to work together and build our relationships and forming trust and understanding each other. If we had not done those things in the off season, we could never have done what we were in the midst of doing.
My hope is that, you know, what we learned through that we're able to impart to other communities. Should something like this hit, and maybe they'll have some of those questions answered ahead of time, but you know, like I was saying, next flood we're going to be amazing at this.
We know from experience and other disasters that people will not voluntarily leave their homes. Oftentimes they need to be asked one-on-one, they need to be coaxed out. People take great pride in the fact that people's lives were not lost in this storm. I contend that one of the biggest reasons lives were not lost was because of what the partnership between Serve the City and Lynn County and Cedar Rapids of going door to door, telling people your lives are at risk, your property is important, but your life is more important. Let us help you leave your home and take you to safety.